So film photography is kinda having a moment right now. More and more people are getting into it because, let's be real, film just has a look that digital can't quite match. The colors, the grain, that organic, imperfect vibe. It's got character. But if you actually shot on film, you know it's not all sunshine and nostalgia. It's expensive, it's slow, and sometimes your scans can come back looking not how you imagined. So this is where Dehancer for Lightroom comes into play. So what is Dehancer, you might ask? Well, Dehancer is a powerful Lightroom plugin that allows you to emulate the authentic look of analog film photography. What this means is that you can take your photos shot on a DSLR or mirrorless camera and make them look like they were shot on a film camera. So before I move on, I must mention that not only is Dehancer available for Lightroom, it is also available for software such as Adobe Photoshop as well as Capture One Pro. And on video, it is also available for DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut Pro. So quick disclaimer, Dehancer is not paying me to make this video. However, you will be supporting my channel if you decide to purchase a subscription making use of my 10% discount code, which I will put up over here as well as in the description box down below. So getting back to the plugin, some of the key features includes over 60 film emulation profiles based on the real film stocks, grain simulations that mimic authentic film grain patterns, color response curves that match analog film behavior, advanced tone mapping capabilities, and lastly, film-like highlights and shadow processing. So now all that's left to do is to actually look at the plugin itself. But before we do that, let's cut to a little ad break. If you made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing to my channel, dropping me a like, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with when I post a new video. So the first thing you would want to do is to come into Lightroom, going to your Lightroom settings under preferences, and then come into external editing over here. Now if you're going to do some editing later within Photoshop, what you would want to do is to make sure that these settings are selected. So your file format should be at TIFF, your color space should be sRGB, your bit depth will be set to 16-bit, and your resolution should be set to 240. Now these are the settings Dehancer recommends you choose. Then secondly, you would come down to additional external editor. Now what you will notice once you have downloaded Dehancer, it will not be one of the external editors selected, so you still have to do that. And how you do that is to come into choose over here, open that up, you go over into applications, and then you'll see there's a folder available which says Dehancer Lightroom plugin. You will just select that, open it up, and then you will choose Dehancer Lightroom plugin, and now it will be selected as your external editors or one of your external editors. And then the last thing you want to make sure of is to just make sure that these settings over here matches with what you have up there. So now the next thing we would want to do is to prepare our image for Dehancer. So before I give you the recommended settings for the image, I'm firstly going to do some edits of my own. Nothing too much, just I would like to crop my image a little bit. Right, I think I'm happy with that. Then the next thing that you should do, now this is one of the recommended settings, is to choose your profile here as Adobe Standard. And then another setting of my own, I'm just going to bring down the temperature a little bit, right, just the temperature a little bit. And then now we're going to continue with the recommended settings from Dehancer. This is what they recommend you should do before you move on into Dehancer Lightroom plugin. So the exposure I'm going to set at -1. You'll see what this does to the image just in a moment. And then the contrast I will be setting to -40. Right, and then the blacks I'm going to set to +60.
right? And now what you see here is that you have created a flat looking photo, and this would be the recommended settings or the recommended look for your photo before you take it into Dehancer, and this will give you the best possible results. Now obviously you can do your own settings over here if you want to. I know that we all have a unique way of editing our photos, but this is what Dehancer recommends. And then last thing I want to make sure of is to just check that my tone curve is set to linear. Yeah, so this is how you edit your photo with inside of Lightroom before you move on to Dehancer. Now how you would go into Dehancer is just to right click on your photo and you come down to edit in, and then you'll see that Dehancer is one of the options here, and I'll just click on edit in. Right, so now once you are inside of Dehancer, in my opinion, if I have a look at the layout here, I can see that it is quite simple. Everything that you need to edit your photo is right where you can see it. On the left hand side, this is where you will choose your film profiles, and then on the right hand side is where you will do your more finer adjustments. So looking at the left hand side, you have an option here of choosing your film stock or a preset if you want to. Let's just go back to film, and here under profile you have a selection of over 60 film profiles to choose from, and you can also select your favorite or make a favorite selection. And how you would do that is to maybe go over to one of the film profiles, and then you can click on the heart over there to make it one of your favorites. And where you would find that is to come over into this tab over here and then go into your favorites. And as you can see, I already have a couple of favorites selected over here. So I'm just gonna go with Fuji Chrome Provia 100F. I think I like how this looks. And the last thing before we move over to the right hand side is we can make an adjustment here to the push and pull slider. And if I bring the slider to the left, you'll see it darkens the image a little bit. Now I understand that this sort of gives you the ability to adjust the color contrast of the photo within the selected profile. If I bring it over to the right, you'll see that it exposes the image more, it sort of brightens it a little bit. I think we're gonna go with something at 0.40. Moving over to the right, we can hide the left panel if you want. In this selection here, you can restore the last used setting, or you can reset all settings to default if you want. And then the last option here is to undo last edit if you made a mistake and you want to undo it. And then moving over to the far right, you can hide the histogram or unhide it. I'm gonna go with the hidden histogram. Here you can zoom into your image if you want to have a better look, and this will give you a before or after of your image, so you can see what each of the adjustments do to your photo. Now before I move on, I must say that if you are somebody like me who's completely new to using Dehancer, this is maybe where I would have stopped. I would make my selection of profiles over here, and then if I'm happy with what I see, I wouldn't go any further. But if you want to be a bit more creative, obviously then you're gonna come into the right panel over here and you are going to make your finer adjustments. So now let's have a look at the first one over here, which is our source. Under our source panel, here you can adjust your exposure, your temperature and the tint, and you can also remove your chromatic aberration with the sliders over here. if you did not do that with inside of Lightroom. So let's have a look at the first one. If I bring my exposure down, obviously you can see what that does. It will make my, or darken my image more, or darken the photo a little bit more. If I bring it up to the right hand side, you'll see that I have a much more brighter look. I am gonna go with, let's say, something over there. And then if you come down, you can also increase the temperature of your image. I can either increase it to the right so I can have a more warmer look, or I can bring it down so I can have a more bluish cooler look. And I think I am gonna go with something about over there. Under your tint comp, with this slider you can make your photo look more green if you wanted to, or if you increase it to the right, you can make your image look a bit more magenta. But I think I'm happy with how it looked before. So now, as you could see, if I want to undo any of the adjustments, all you have to do is to double click on the slider over there and it will bring it back to 0. And like I said before, here you can just remove the chromatic aberration with these two sliders. Within the Film Developer tab, let's just activate that quickly. What we can do here is to increase the contrast under Contrast Boost. So if I pull it to the right, you will see that I am increasing the contrast of my image. And if I decrease it to the left, I will then decrease the contrast of my photo. So I think I am gonna go with something that looks a bit flatter, maybe slightly more. I'll leave it at that. What the gamma correction does, like I understand, this allows us to shift the midtones towards the shadows or the highlights. So let's just see how that works. As you can see, since I've made a minor adjustment, one thing that you must note, if you don't adjust your contrast boost, then your gamma correction and color separation, you won't see any change in there. So I guess since I made a minor adjustment over here, you won't be able to see that over here on the photo. But if I activate our histogram over here, and if I increase the gamma correction to the right, as you can see that, take note or have a look at the blue graph over there, you'll see that it does change. So it will shift, seems like it's shifting more to the right. And if I pull it to the left, and then it will sort of slightly, so you can see minor adjustment over there. Let's just bring this back to where it was. Double click on the slider to do so. Let's have a look at the color separation. What this does, as you can see, it is set at 100 at default. If I make a change here, what this will do is to reduce the saturation of the most intense colors. So that will reduce first. And as you can see, once again, it is a minor adjustment. I can't even notice it. But this is because of the contrast boost over here. I didn't make any big adjustments over there. Then next, for the color boost, what this does is it will just make my photo look a bit more saturated if I increase it to the right. Not sure if you can notice that. Here we go. If I pull it to the extreme, then you can see my photo is now more saturated. If I pull it to the left, my photo is now less saturated. So I think I am going to stick with it at 0. For film compression, let's activate that. Let's just make sure that it is set to 0. So now under impact, what this will do is if I slide it to the right, you'll see that I will reduce my highlights. So we'll push it more to the midtones. And if I decrease it, then you'll see I introduced more highlights. If you just take note of the forehead here of the model, you'll see that that piece of highlight over there will increase the more I go to the left, and the more I go to the right it will decrease. So I think I'm going to leave it where it was before. And here with the white point you can just do a bit more finer adjustments if you wanted to, right? Tonal range, as you can see, once more I can do that, but obviously it will start to look a bit more weird if I do that, so I'll just bring it back to where it was to make it look more natural, right? Within the expand tab, if we open this up, you will see that we have more control here of the black and white points, right? I'm just gonna leave it where it is. The next thing you would want to do maybe is to open up your print tab over here, and then you can make a selection of print mediums. So you have a couple of options here. You can either go with linear, Cineon, Fujifilm 3513, Kodak 383, or even Kodak Enduro glossy paper. But I think I like the way the Fujifilm 3513 looks, and I think that is it for now. I can also make more finer adjustments to how this will look, but I think I'm okay with how this looks. I like the look of that. Under the color head tab, we are all familiar with this. It's quite similar to what you would find within Lightroom. Let's activate it quickly. Here we can just make more finer adjustments to the color of the photo. So if I slide it to the left, you'll see I can make my photo look more yellow. If I slide it to the right, I can make my photo look more blue. Double click to bring it back to 0. For magenta, I can make it look more magenta, or green if you wanted to, but I think you get the idea. We can even adjust our shadows, midtones and highlights like we are familiar with. Once again, you would find this inside of Lightroom, so I think we all are familiar with this. However, one thing I would like to mention, if you select gang over here, then you can adjust them all at once if you wanted to. And then another cool thing that we can do, which I think Dehancer is doing much better than you would find within Lightroom, is to choose the type of film grain you want. So now you can go with a custom look if you wanted to, or you can go with one of these selections over here. Let's see how the ISO 250 looks, right? That gives you a nice finer grain. If you go to something like 500, you'll see that it becomes more grainier. And then let's look at one of these selections over here. If I go to the 35mm, let's see how that looks in comparison to the 8mm. Once again, as you can see, it changes the look of the photo. Not sure, can't really see if there's a big difference between the two. Let's maybe look at the 65mm ISO 500. Right, so I think I like how this looks. It's a much softer grain for me personally. Let's just zoom in a little bit more. Right, I think I'm okay with how this looks. Maybe if we have a closer look, let's see if we can see if there's a big difference. Yeah, they automatically, you can see that if I choose the 16mm ISO 500, it looks a bit more grainier. And if I go with the 65 ISO 500, the grain is a bit softer. Right, now once again, You can obviously choose a custom setting if you wanted to, but for me personally, since I'm not a big fan of grain, I guess because I'm shooting mostly on digital, I'm gonna go with something that looks a bit softer. So another cool adjustment that we can add to our photo is within the Halation tab. If we activate that, you'll notice that immediately we have this halo that appeared around our model, this reddish glow around the edges here. If we zoom in, let me just show you. As you can see, there's a red glow around the model over there. If I deactivate it and activate it again, you can see that it appears. I think maybe, and then also it affects the skin tones of the model as well. You can also do a custom adjustment to this. Let's just see what happens if I do this, and maybe let's go to where we can see it a little bit better over here. If I increase the limiter, then I sort of reduce. Let's maybe put mask mode on so you can see what it does. If I decrease it to the left, I will add a larger glow, and if I pull it to the right, then I will add a much softer glow or less pronounced. Let's just take this off again. So I think I'm gonna go with something that is less obvious. Let's just zoom out. I think we can maybe bring back a little bit more, and I think I am okay with something around about there, right? I think that is all I'm going to do with this. And then bloom is also another cool feature that is added here. What this does is it softens the highlights as to create a more dreamier look if you wanted to. So let's just add that. Now as you can see, it softens up the highlights a little bit. You can choose one of the presets over here, or you can make a custom selection if you wanted to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with one of the presets, which makes it just, I like this, where they made it much more easier for us who are newbies to this. So I think I'm going to go, let's see if I go with a 35 more, what that does. Maybe a 65 or 70. I think I am okay with this. I think I like how this looks. Gives us that dreamy glow to the model. And then foam damage, this is quite obvious what this would do to the image. If you activate it here, you can see that I have a little scratch that appeared there. Let's just maybe focus on that spot there. If I deactivate it, you can see the scratch disappears. If I activate it, then it reappears there. You can make another preset selection over here to add more scratches and dust. This will give us that aged look if you wanted to, that unique look. I don't think I like the fact that my image will look like it's damaged. Let's just go with something with no foam damage. I think I like how this looks, a much cleaner look for me. And then the last thing I want to look at is the vignette. Here, this is also quite obvious since we are familiar with this. Within Lightroom, you can just add a vignette to your photo if you wanted to, right? As you can see, it sort of affects the whole photo. If you increase or decrease the exposure here, or increase the exposure if you wanted to. I'm just gonna go with the default setting. Here we can increase the size or decrease the size. We can feather it also if you wanted to, but I think that will be it for me for this photo. I think one thing I would like to mention here is that maybe Dehancer could add like a little description to each of these tabs or to each of these sliders, just to show us what it would do, because I mean for many of us, most of this will be new and we are not familiar with how some of these film edits works. So I think it would be a nice feature to have, to add like a short description to tell us what each of these sliders will do.
So one thing I do like about what Dehancer did is the fact that they took this plugin and they made it available as an iOS app, which means you will be able to use it on your iPhone as well as on your iPad. So lastly, let's have a look at the iOS app.
So let's just open up our app over here. As you can see, we have the Dehancer app downloaded already. As you can see, I have the same photo selected as within the previous section of this video. And note, when you first download the app, it will ask you to download the film profiles. So just be patient when you do that. And as you can see, I think it's quite simple. They kept it quite simple. Top left, you'll see you can open up your histogram if you wanted. You can activate it. I'm just gonna go with the deactivated version of this. In the bottom section, you have some options available. You can save your work if you wanted to. If this is the preset that you want to go with, you can save it and for future use. If you scroll to the right, you can see you can share, delete or sort the presets in alphabetical order or from new or oldest. You can even filter your categories like within the desktop version. And then also, if you don't want to go with any of the presets, you can just go into the editing tab, and if you just have a look down below, you'll see that you basically have the same editing tools available to you. You can crop your image if you wanted to. I already did that. Maybe we can just crop it a little bit more. I think I'm okay with that. When you go into source, here you can adjust your exposure like that, just pressing on the slider and then sliding it to the right to increase the exposure, sliding it to the left to decrease the exposure. And if you don't like what you did, all you have to do is to double click or double press onto the slider and it will undo or set it back to 0. Right, you have your film stocks available to you, and once again you have over 60 film stocks available to choose from. Let's maybe go with Kodak color plus 200. You can even adjust the push and pull slider like within the previous or like within the desktop version of Dehancer. You can also open up the developer tab and increase the contrast of the image or decrease it if you wanted to. Color separation is there, your color boost is there. You can change the compression of the image, so you impact the white point and the tonal range as well as the color density. You can open up the expand and adjust these settings even more with black point, the white point and color mode. You can even choose the print medium if you want to. Let's just see how my favorite one looks with this film profile. Let's maybe increase the, I think I'm gonna go with, let's see what linear looks like. Let's just leave it at linear. You can also adjust the color edge, and like I've mentioned, we all know what this does to our image. And you can add your film grain. I'm just gonna go with, let's go with something like 65mm ISO 250. Let's see what, there we go, maybe something like that if you wanted to. Your 16mm ISO 500. You can also add your halation. Now as you can see, if you choose one of the presets, you can only adjust the amplify slider, or you can come into the custom setting and then you can add your halation, or sorry, you can adjust or the finer settings here. You can also add some bloom to your image. Right, let's go with something like that. And then lastly, your vignette, off some film damage if you wanted to. So one thing I've noticed with this app, to activate or deactivate any of the adjustments here, all you have to do is press on film damage and it will activate, or press again on film damage and it will deactivate the edit there. And then lastly, you have your overscan, but we're not gonna go there. Okay, so one thing I did forget to mention is that you can actually adjust how much of the photo you can see by just holding down on the middle bar and dragging it down to see more of the photo, or to increase the size of the photo for a better visual, or you can slide it back up to see more of the adjustment controls, right? And that's basically it, guys.
And there you have it, guys. The answer for Lightroom. Let me know if it's something you'll be adding to your photo editing workflow, and I'll see you guys in the next one.